Are the giants of Revelation awakening? The shocking truth about the Nephilim's return. For centuries, humanity has whispered their name in fear. Shadows that drift between myth and memory, the Nephilim giants spoken of in the oldest pages of Scripture are not quaint legends or harmless fables. They are the haunting echo of a history too dreadful to forget. They remain not as relics of folklore, nor as metaphors locked away in allegory, but as an open wound in the human story, a mystery that refuses to close, a presence that lingers at the edge of our collective consciousness. Genesis, with unnerving boldness, dared to record what most ancient scribes would have trembled to write, that the sons of God mingled with the daughters of men, and from this forbidden union emerged beings of staggering size and unspeakable power. These giants shaped civilizations, toppled empires, and filled the world with violence. The text offers no comforting symbolism. It records the account with chilling brevity, as if to remind us that the most disturbing truths arrive not in shouts, but in whispers. And so the question presses upon us like a weight on the chest. Were these giants truly destroyed, swept away by the great flood? Or do the visions of Revelation warn us of something more dreadful, that they might rise again in the final days, returning to walk once more among men? We live in an age intoxicated by progress, convinced that science has stripped the world of angels and demons. Yet as certainty swells, so too do the reports. Strange sightings, monstrous anomalies, whispers of the uncanny that refuse to be silenced. From bones unearthed that defy explanation, to prophetic patterns that seem to converge with the chaos of our time. The evidence gathers like thunderheads on the horizon, and in the gathering storm, the name Nephilim returns, demanding not dismissal, but attention. If these questions stir you, if they ignite both fear and fascination, then you are not alone. Join the conversation, share your thoughts below, and subscribe so you won't miss the revelations still to come. Giants in the Bible, the forbidden history they don't want you to know. There is a reason this story feels forbidden, a reason mainstream scholarship shudders at its mention. The Nephilim stand at the crossroads of theology, myth, and forbidden knowledge, an intersection that unsettles tidy categories and threatens established narratives. If we take the Bible seriously, we cannot dismiss them as mere symbols. They appear too starkly, too often, to be erased by metaphor. Consider their origin. Genesis 6 describes them with startling frankness. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, and men of renown. In this brief passage lies a history that most theologians have tried desperately to suppress. Who were these sons of God? The phrase is pregnant with meaning, suggesting not mortals but celestial beings, fallen ones who transgressed divine boundaries. And what was born of their union? Not simply larger humans, but hybrids creatures straddling heaven and earth, beings of extraordinary strength, corrupted power, and monstrous appetite. For centuries, Jewish and Christian thinkers wrestled with this passage. The Book of Enoch, excluded from the biblical canon, elaborated upon it in terrifying detail, describing angels who descended upon Mount Hermon, took wives for themselves, and begot giants who ravaged the earth. These giants devoured crops, livestock, and eventually human flesh itself. They were not just anomalies of biology, they were predators of civilization. Their violence was so great, their corruption so deep, that God unleashed the flood to cleanse creation itself. Yet, disturbingly, Scripture does not consign the Nephilim to the flood alone. The book of Numbers records the terror of the Israelite spies who entered Canaan. We saw the Nephilim there. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. How could the Nephilim reappear after the flood? This unsettling note has provoked centuries of speculation. Were some spared? Were they reborn through the same forbidden unions? Or were they never truly gone, only sleeping in the hidden chambers of the earth? And then there is the Revelation connection. In the final book of Scripture, the apocalyptic visions teem with monstrous figures, hybrids of beast and man, heavenly and demonic. John's language is cloaked in symbol, yet the resonance with Genesis 6 is undeniable. beasts that ascend from the earth and sea, powers that enslave nations, giants that war against the Lamb. It is as though the story begun in Genesis finds its climax in Revelation. Here lies the forbidden history, that the giants of old were not simply a footnote to human origins, but a prelude to humanity's end. Scholars may dismiss it as superstition, but the thread is woven too intricately to ignore. The Bible whispers of them in Genesis, echoes of them thunder in Numbers, and the shadow of their return looms in Revelation. What makes this history forbidden is not that it is hidden, but that it is too clear. To acknowledge it is to admit that the cosmos is not sterile, that history is not merely human, and that our future may yet be shaped by beings whose scale dwarfs our comprehension. It is no wonder that authorities, both religious and secular, have long sought to bury this truth. The giants of the Bible unsettle the narrative of human self-sufficiency. They suggest that we are not the only actors on history's stage, that forces older, darker, and greater have shaped our destiny and may yet return to claim it. And so the whispers continue. Every ancient ruin too large for ordinary men, every colossal stone lifted without machinery, every myth of gods mating with mortals becomes another thread in the tapestry. Beneath them all beats a single dreadful pulse. The Nephilim are not gone. They are only waiting. Unearthed evidence. Are ancient bones proving the giants were real? History is not silent. It speaks not only through sacred texts, but through the ground beneath our feet. The earth remembers, and at times it betrays secrets that institutions would rather keep hidden. If the Nephilim were only myth, then the soil should yield nothing but ordinary bones, nothing but the quiet record of common humanity. Yet what has been unearthed across centuries suggests otherwise. Again and again, reports surface of skeletons of staggering size. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, newspapers across America published accounts of giant remains uncovered in burial mounds from the Ohio Valley to the plains of the Midwest. Bones measuring twice the size of ordinary men, skulls with strange proportions, jaws so wide they could fit over a normal human's face. These were not isolated findings. They were a pattern. Local farmers, amateur archaeologists, even government expeditions reported them. And yet, curiously, these remains vanished into museum basements, government warehouses, or most often into silence. Skeptics scoff, dismissing such accounts as exaggeration, hoax, or error. And yet one must ask, why the rush to erase these discoveries? Why did the Smithsonian, entrusted with preserving America's heritage, quietly remove so many of these reports from circulation? Could it be that evidence of giants threatened not just scientific orthodoxy but theological comfort? If the Nephilim were real, the Bible's strangest story suddenly shifts from metaphor to history. That possibility, for many, is too disruptive to endure. But the testimony of bones is not confined to America. In the deserts of the Middle East, in the mountains of Asia, in forgotten tombs across Europe, oversized remains whisper of a different kind of humanity, one that dwarfed us in stature and in mystery. Legends of giants are not confined to one culture. They saturate them all. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, towering beings who descended from the heavens. The Greeks told of the Gigantes who waged war against the gods. The Norse sang of the Jotun, whose battles shook the 9 realms. Again and again, cultures separated by oceans and millennia record the same truth. Giants walk the earth. It is tempting to treat these myths as archetypal echoes, figments of imagination reaching for metaphor. But when myths align with bones, the line between poetry and reality blurs. Could it be that these myths are the fractured memory of an ancient terror? Could it be that what Genesis calls Nephilim, the Greeks named Titans, the Norse remembered as Jotun, and the Sumerians honored as Anunnaki all point to the same monstrous reality? And then there are the ruins. Consider the megalithic structures scattered across the globe, some of which defy even our modern engineering. Stones weighing hundreds of tons stacked with precision, lifted into place without cranes, cut with a sophistication beyond the tools of their time. From Baalbek in Lebanon to Puma Punku in Bolivia, from the Great Pyramids to the stone circles of Britain, the fingerprints of an ancient power linger. Could these not be the works of ordinary men, but of beings of impossible strength? If we take the biblical record seriously that the Nephilim were heroes of old, men of renown, then perhaps these ruins are their monuments, silent testaments to their reign. The question then presses upon us, why is such evidence suppressed? Why is the story of giants erased from textbooks, buried beneath ridicule, and dismissed by the gatekeepers of knowledge? Perhaps the answer is not ignorance, but fear. For if giants were real, then our world is not what we think it is. Our history is not merely human, and the beings that Revelation warns of may not be allegories, but ancestors of something that still lurks beyond the veil. Let us not forget, even in Scripture, the Nephilim are described as returning after those days. They are not confined to pre-flood history. They reappear in Canaan. They re-emerge in the apocalyptic visions of Revelation. If their bones lie beneath our soil, what assurance do we have that their bloodline has vanished? Modern science, with its fascination for genetics, has opened a door that perhaps should have remained closed. As laboratories tinker with DNA, creating hybrids, chimeras, and engineered mutations, we must ask, wow, are we repeating the ancient sin of Genesis 6? Could it be that the Nephilim do not need to return, for we are already calling them back through our own arrogance? Some of the unearthed bones suggest anomalies, skull shapes incompatible with normal human anatomy, elongated features that recall not man, but something other. And yet, rather than confront this, the evidence is shelved, hidden, or discredited. The earth itself seems to protest. Strange seismic discoveries reveal chambers buried deep, unexplored caverns where legends claim the giants were imprisoned. Indigenous traditions across the world speak of great beings sealed beneath mountains, chained until the appointed time of their release. Revelation speaks with eerie resonance. The abyss was opened, and smoke rose like the smoke of a gigantic furnace. And out of the smoke, locusts came down on the earth. Why, could it be that these locusts are not insects but a metaphor for ancient beings released from their prison? Could the bones we find on the surface be only the faintest whisper of what still slumbers below? For the skeptic, these questions will never suffice. But for the attentive, the accumulation of evidence, textual, archeological, mythological, is too great to dismiss. The giants of Revelation may not be a future threat alone. They may be a past reality breaking into our present, their bones a testimony, their myths a warning, their ruins a reminder. The ground does not lie. It speaks, and what it says is terrifying. The giants were real, and if they were real once, they can be real again. Prophetic warnings. Is Revelation pointing to a giant uprising? Prophecy is not written to flatter us. It does not soothe us with the illusions of safety, nor does it indulge our fantasies of progress without end. Prophecy exists to shatter complacency, to remind us that history bends not toward our desires, but toward divine judgment. And of all the prophetic voices in Scripture, none strikes with more terror and awe than the revelation of John. Its language is fire, its visions apocalyptic storms. It is not a book for the timid. It is a book that tears away the veil. When John wrote on the island of Patmos, exiled and alone, he saw more than symbols. He saw realities too great for ordinary words. And so he clothed them in images: beasts, dragons, angels, trumpets, seals, and bowls of wrath. Yet for those with eyes to see, the parallels between Genesis and Revelation blaze with significance. Genesis introduces the Nephilim, hybrids of heaven and earth, wrestlers of divine boundaries, giants of destruction. Revelation ends with monstrous beings unleashed in the final tribulation, a return of that ancient rebellion magnified to cosmic proportions. Consider the beast from the sea, described in Revelation 13. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. This is no ordinary ruler, no mere human tyrant. It is a hybrid, a fusion of animal, demonic, and political power. Its very form is a monstrosity, recalling the hybrid offspring of Genesis 6. Just as the Nephilim were born of a forbidden union, so the beast emerges from a blending of the natural and the supernatural. Or consider Revelation 9, The vision of the abyss. The star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like the smoke of a gigantic furnace. And out of the smoke, locusts came down on the earth and were given power like that of scorpions of the earth. These are not insects in any natural sense. They are described with armor like horses prepared for battle, faces resembling humans, hair like women, and teeth like lions. Their king is named Abaddon the Destroyer. This vision carries the unmistakable echo of Genesis 6, abominations born of transgression, released upon the earth as judgment. They are not metaphors for sin alone. They are manifestations of sin embodied, Nephilim-like creatures emerging from imprisonment to torment humanity. The great irony is that Revelation does not introduce a new terror, but revives an ancient one. The giants of Genesis were not merely a problem for the early chapters of history, they were a foreshadowing of the end. What began as rebellion before the flood returns as judgment at the apocalypse. The Nephilim were the first fruits of angelic disobedience, and Revelation warns that their kind will be the instruments of divine wrath at the close of the age. Why giants? Why hybrids? Why does Scripture return again and again to beings that cross boundaries? The answer lies in the nature of sin itself. Sin is not content with corruption. It seeks fusion, perversion, the breaking down of divine order. Angels were not meant to mingle with humans, beasts not meant to mingle with spirits. Yet in rebellion, boundaries collapse and monstrosities are born. The Nephilim symbolize sin's ultimate outcome, the distortion of creation itself into something grotesque. Revelation's beasts, like Genesis's giants, are the children of boundary breaking. They are sin, given flesh, rebellion incarnate. And do we not see this in our own age? Technology blurs the line between man and machine. Genetics blurs the line between species. Philosophy blurs the line between good and evil. In our arrogance, we reenact the very transgression that birthed the Nephilim, and Revelation warns us where it leads. We are not progressing toward utopia. We are regressing toward Genesis 6, toward a world ripe for judgment. The prophets understood this cycle. Jesus himself in Matthew 24 declared, "As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man." The days of Noah were the days of Nephilim, days when violence filled the earth, when flesh was corrupted, when giants walked among men. If Jesus warns that the end will mirror the days of Noah, we must ask, does this mean the Nephilim will return as well? Revelation's visions suggest the answer is yes. And the signs intensify. Wars and rumors of wars shake the nations. Natural disasters strike with increasing ferocity. Humanity teeters on the edge of self-destruction through nuclear arms, genetic tampering, and artificial intelligence. These are not random events. They are the stage setting for something larger. As Revelation unfolds, the world convulses in labor pains, giving birth not only to the reign of Christ, but also to the return of ancient terrors. The prophetic warning is clear. The Nephilim are not dead, they are waiting. Whether sealed in the abyss, buried in forgotten tombs, or lingering in spiritual realms, their time will come again. Revelation shows us a world once more stalked by giants, whether literal or hybrid, empowered by the dragon and arrayed against the Lamb. Their uprising is not a fantasy, but a certainty, a chapter already written. The question is not whether the giants will rise, but whether we will be ready. Revelation was given not to paralyze us with fear, but to awaken us from slumber. The giants of old remind us that human strength cannot withstand supernatural rebellion. Only the Lamb who was slain can triumph over the beast. The Nephilim may rise, but they will fall before Christ. Their return may terrify, but it also testifies the nearness of redemption. In the end, Revelation does not glorify the giants, it exposes their doom. Yet it compels us to face a sobering truth. Before their destruction, they will walk among us again. And in their towering shadows, humanity will be forced to choose between allegiance to the beast or allegiance to the Lamb. This is the prophetic warning, chilling and undeniable. The giants are awakening, and their uprising will shake the earth. The modern connection. Are the Nephilim already among us? Prophecy is not a museum artifact. It is not an ancient relic to be admired behind glass, disconnected from the present. It is living fire. It reaches through time, searing the conscience of every generation. And so we must ask the most unsettling question of all. Are the Nephilim not merely a shadow of the past or a terror of the future, but a reality of the present? To dismiss this is easy. Our modern world prides itself on skepticism, on the cold detachment of science. Yet beneath the surface, the evidence gnaws like termites in a wooden beam. Strange sightings, unexplained phenomena, genetic experiments that flirt with the boundaries of creation itself, all converge toward a chilling possibility. The Nephilim may already be here, hidden in plain sight. Consider the rise of uncanny reports. Across the globe, witnesses describe figures of staggering size, glimpsed at the edge of forests, atop mountains, or beneath the cover of night. Some call them cryptids, others dismiss them as hallucinations or hoaxes. But to the attentive ear, these testimonies sound eerily familiar. The descriptions, height, strength, the aura of dread echo the ancient accounts of giants. If so many cultures across so many ages have spoken of them, why, is it arrogance to assume we, in our modern sophistication, are exempt from their presence? But it is not only in folklore and sightings that the Nephilim shadow falls. It is in the laboratories of our age. Genetic manipulation, once the realm of speculative fiction, is now reality. We splice animals' genes into human embryos. We experiment with creating chimeras, hybrids of man and beast. We pursue the dream of enhanced humanity, stronger, taller, more resilient, more intelligent. Do we not hear in this the echo of Genesis 6? Sons of heaven, daughters of men, boundaries crossed, hybrids born. The old sin repeats itself in sterile, fluorescent-lit rooms under the guise of science. The philosophers of old warned that hubris is the downfall of man. Hubris is not merely arrogance. It is the desire to ascend beyond the limits set by God, to play at divinity. And in our genetic ambition, our technological pride, our hunger to transcend mortality, we have stumbled into the oldest trap. In seeking to be gods, we may become the creators of monsters. Perhaps the Nephilim will not return from ancient graves, but from petri dishes in our own laboratories. Perhaps their reemergence is not a supernatural event alone, but a scientific blasphemy of our own making. Yet prophecy suggests more. Revelation does not limit itself to genetic corruption. It speaks of spiritual deception. The beast deceives the nations with signs and wonders. The dragon masquerades as light. Could it be that the Nephilim in some form already walk among us, not merely as genetic experiments, but as spiritual infiltrators? Giants need not always stand 10 feet tall. They may wear suits, occupy positions of power, wield influence in ways less visible but no less monstrous. Scripture describes them as men of renown, heroes of old. In our own Imam age, we worship athletes, celebrities, and leaders with a fervor that borders on idolatry. Is it unthinkable that among the renowned of today, shadows of the Nephilim already linger? And then there is the silence. Why, when bones of extraordinary size are found, do they vanish? Why are reports buried, photographs discredited, artifacts locked away? Suppression itself testifies. For what institution, what government, what religious order would want humanity to confront the possibility that we are not alone on this earth, that giants once walked among us and may do so again? Silence is not proof of absence. Silence is the most deafening proof of presence. But perhaps the greatest evidence lies not in bones, sightings, or science, but in the restlessness of the human soul. Why does the story of the Nephilim grip us so fiercely? Why, across ages and cultures, does humanity return to the image of giants, of hybrid beings, of forbidden unions? It is because the human heart remembers. We carry in our collective memory the trauma of encountering these beings, just as a child carries the shadow of an ancient fear. Revelation is not merely prophecy of what will be, it is memory of what has been and warning of what is becoming again. And so we arrive at the threshold. The question is not simply whether the Nephilim will return. The question is whether they have already begun their infiltration, whether they are shaping our politics, our culture, our science, preparing us for a world in which the boundaries between man and God, natural and unnatural, collapse entirely. The modern connection is unavoidable. Giants are no longer relegated to children's stories or ancient texts. Their specter haunts our headlines, our laboratories, our skies. Whether through bones unearthed, beasts of revelation, or the hubris of our own hands, the Nephilim loom over us once more. And here, the philosophical weight bears down. What does it mean to live in such a time? It means we cannot hide in cynicism or denial. We must face the uncomfortable truth that humanity has always lived on borrowed time, under the gaze of powers greater and darker than itself. But it also means we are called to courage. For Revelation, though terrifying, is not a book of despair. It is a book of victory. The Nephilim may rise, but they will fall. The giants may return, but they will be crushed beneath the feet of the Lamb. The forbidden history will become the final history, written not in whispers, but in thunder.